when you think about your career, Mpho, you think about where you are as an individual. You think about your dreams, you think about the aspirations. And many of us never ask ourselves, but where is the industry? Where is my profession? What are the needs of my industry? What are the needs of my profession? So you have to balance between pursuing what you want and making sure that you have what the industry or what the environment is looking for. So research is very important. So one of the things that I noted as I was interviewing the people that are in the book, when I asked them, because remember, these people, the reason why I chose them is because it's people that I know. It's people that, in a way, I grew up with, I went to university with. But when I look at their careers seem to have had, some extra acceleration. I can't figure out what happened. And I wanted to sit down with them because, sometimes when you sit down with people and you ask them, so how did you become successful? They tell you, no, work hard, trust God, the grace of God is sufficient. And you are doing all those things, but when you are not seeing the same success. Yes. So I actually sat down with them, and as I sat down with, and funny enough, even after the book, I continue to sit with other people who I think are successful, and I ask them the same question. And I found that for every single one of them, they will say all these things. I worked hard, I networked, I raised my hand, I had my goals, etc., etc. And at some point, every single one of them will say, but to be honest, at that time, maybe there was the BEE charter and they were looking at black people that they can promote. Or maybe there were these things. They were looking for SMMEs in this industry that can supply. So those people, what happened to them is when they were given the opportunity, they had one or two options. And this is the same for you and I. That for all of us in our careers, even if you look back at your career now, you will be able to identify moments of opportunity. And sometimes when that opportunity comes, you can't recognize it. You don't see it as an opportunity. Maybe that opportunity comes as someone saying, do something that is outside of your job description. Or they are asking you to stay for longer in the office. And when you just have a new relationship, you are in a hurry to go see your new boyfriend or your new girlfriend. And you're just, I'm not going to stay at work and work until late. So what you don't realize is that by refusing opportunity that came disguised as extra time, or that came disguised as you preparing a presentation that you were not ready for, or using tools that you did not know or that you did not understand. By you refusing that opportunity, you actually denied yourself an opportunity to go to the next level in your career. And as I said, there are two responses to an opportunity. So generally, when an opportunity comes, many of us, you look at yourself, you look at the opportunity, and the opportunity seems greater than you. The opportunity seems greater than your abilities, than your experience, than your knowledge, than your exposure. So most of us, when an opportunity like that comes, you realize that you don't have everything to take that opportunity immediately. So you can either say no to the opportunity, or you can say yes to the opportunity. If you say yes to the opportunity, remember we've already said the opportunity is bigger than you. Then while you are in the opportunity, you can either sink or you swim. So remember, if you are like me and you don't know how to swim, like I literally don't know how to swim, before you when you are too young, Mpho, you are too young not to know how to swim. I grew up in the apartheid era. Black people did not have swimming pools. So what's your excuse? Please go and learn how to swim. So if you are like me and you have an opportunity to swim, the first thing that you need to do is you need to go for lessons. So it may seem like you are slow in providing results where the opportunity is concerned, but it's because in order for you to swim, in order for you to be able to deliver with this opportunity, you have to take a couple of steps back and begin to train so that by the time you are in the water, you don't drown. I'll give you an example with my own career. So when I had a career change and I was moving from being an engineer to being a management consultant, so I was working for one of the big 4 accounting firms as a senior consultant, and they put me on a a client who was a mining client, and I was servicing the CEO at the time, advising her. Munna, I was an engineer. I came from the plant Mpho. I was used to servicing plants and pumps and pipes. And now all of a sudden, they know that I'm an engineer, I know the mining industry, and I'm given a role where I'm supposed to advise the CEO. But the CEO, Mpho, is not concerned with is the pump working, is the plant at full efficiency. The CEO is concerned with strategy, is concerned with markets, is concerned with the mining industry as a whole. So there was a big gap between what I knew as an engineer working in the mining industry and what now I'm expected to do as an engineer supporting at board and at CEO level. So I had a very big learning gap that my experience could not fill. And what did I do? I sat a lot with people who had been consultants before, asking them a lot of questions. I sat on my computer a lot doing research about the mining industry, because sometimes you are working in broadcasting, but you understand broadcasting only as far as Radio Pulpit is concerned. But to be able to advise at that strategic level, you need to understand the entire industry. You need to understand community radio stations. You need to understand paid, how to get licenses, how to measure who your customers are, how to reach out to new listeners, how to have an engaged audience. What do listeners want to listen to? How do I move my Afrikaans listening listeners from RSG to come to Radio Pulpit? How do I move my Xhosa listeners from Mhlobo Wenene to listen to my program on Radio Pulpit? So those things, now you're no longer thinking at this is where I work level. You are thinking at industry level. And for many people, making that transition is hard. Making that transition does not come easy. And you need support in order to make that transition. So let's look at what are some of the quick things that you can do so that you stop operating at the level where you are only concerned with my report, my job description, my next promotion, etc., but you're starting to think at a strategic level. One, you need to read. And when you read, don't just read books that speak to where you are. Read, and sometimes when you read books that talk about where you want to go. Have you ever read a book, Mpho, and you don't understand what you just read? Like, yeah, you read, you don't understand what they are saying, you don't understand what the passage said, but you know what? The most important thing that I want to advise you to do is don't stop reading, because the more you read, the more you'll start to understand. And some of the things, as you are reading them and you don't understand them, there are very easy tools to use on the internet. Use Wikipedia, use Investopedia, use your Google. If the articles that you are reading are more scholarly articles, use Google Scholar. You know, try and some people don't like reading. Look for podcasts, look at YouTube, find people on YouTube, because some people, they like to watch. So you are watching, you are listening, you are taking notes. So some of the things that I like is on YouTube, there's a channel called The Productivity Game. So what this guy does, he reads a book, and in 7 minutes, he summarizes the book and he develops a PDF one-pager that will give you pictures so that you in 7 minutes, I want to read something on how to be efficient in managing your project. I go to his YouTube channel, I find something like that. Okay, I'm a bit of a nerd. I have a whiteboard in my house, so I put my readings on the whiteboard. The whole week I'm looking at it. By the time the week ends, it's etched into my mind. You ask me about it, I can tell you about it. So find the hacks. Find those hacks, because have you ever sat with someone and they sound like they know everything about everything, and you ask yourself, how does this person know everything about everything? It's because when a subject is difficult to read, they don't give up, they continue reading. So I'll give you some of the things that I use to learn, whether it's on an industry or on the entire profession. One, I said the productivity game. Two, you can download, if you have a smartphone, there's an application called Blinkist. So what Blinkist does is in 13 steps, it's also about 7-8 minutes. It also gives you a summary of a book. So there you are listening to the summary of the book. So if you want, you can get the paid membership. Maybe I'm a cheapskate. I don't get the paid membership. So for the free membership, you don't choose the subject that they teach you. They just give you random subjects. So I started using Blinkist at the beginning of this year, actually at the beginning of lockdown, because they made quite a lot of their books free. So then I joined it. And let me tell you, one of the things that I have learned, or that I have acquired since I started being on Blinkist, I got to read books I would never have chosen, I would never have read, because it's just random. Sometimes it's biology, sometimes it's wellness, sometimes it's business, sometimes it's history. So I got to know or politics. I never read on politics, but because that day there's a Blinkist on politics, I'm reading up on it. And you know the biggest thing for us, Mpho, you guys are lucky. I can hear from your accent that when chances are you went to the same school, to a good school, you had good teachers. But for a person like me who learned English in Sepedi, one of the key things that reading and listening to these things does for me, it helps me with my vocabulary. I'm always speaking to people. And sometimes, that thing. So now I have the word to say what that thing is. So those are some of the small things that, people say, English is not a sign of intelligence. But if I'm sitting here listening to you presenting a business idea to me, and when you are closer, I'm Pedi, and you are explaining the business to me in English, but you don't have the vocabulary, we will never meet each other at a common place. Because why? Communication-wise, we cannot converge. Communication-wise, we don't have synergy. So Blinkist, the productivity game. The other thing, me, I'm a runner. So when I run, which I know runners will fight with me, because runners, they want us not to listen to anything as we run. So now when I run, I listen to a book on Audible. So I would download a book. If you also have a Wi-Fi where you are, what you can do is when you are at home, some of the YouTube videos, you can actually download them onto your phone. So when you are in a Wi-Fi place where data is not going to be that expensive, you download the book. Then when you run, you are listening to the book, and you are not using your data because you've already downloaded it. Or when you are at the gym, for some people, when you take a walk, or when you are chilling in the park meditating. Because most of us, the reason why we don't read about our industries and professions, we claim that we don't have time. And these things that I'm sharing are saying, even in your busy schedule, you can find a way to still learn about your profession, to learn about your industry. Yeah, so for me, most of the time, the Blinkist, when I listen to it, I'm washing dishes. So when I'm washing dishes, it's there because you don't have to watch it, you're listening to it. It's 7-10 minutes. By the time I'm done washing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen, I have not only done work in the kitchen, but I've listened to something as well. These are the little things that give you the competitive edge in your career. These are the little things that make you better. You remember we spent a couple of weeks talking about this thing of speaking in meetings. You also start to be confident when you communicate, because when you are listening to other people presenting and you are listening to other people sharing ideas, it's giving you ideas as to how ideas are shared. It's giving you a model. So without a person, so every day when you are listening to a sermon, if you go to a church where your pastor is a bad preacher, without realizing it, you yourself, you're going to be a bad preacher. Without realizing it, because every Sunday he's teaching you how to deliver a sermon. And if he's a bad preacher, he's teaching you all the bad things, and you end up being a bad preacher as well. So I'll give you yes. So for me personally, I spent quite a lot of time under the ministry, my pastor, Pastor Nzo, and he's a very strong teacher of the word. Like, he's that person, he knows passages of scripture by heart. Ne? Now, on the other hand, I'm a storyteller. Mpho. So now when I preach, I will tell you lots and lots of stories about, hey, this is what happened here. After I've told you all these stories, I will then come back and try to tie it together with a verse. So when I started going to Pastor Nzo's church in around 2009, okay, fine, I mean, he would listen to me. Then one day he said to me, Mantsha, you are a very good preacher, but you don't have depth. I was so hurt, Mpho, I have to tell the truth. I was so hurt over this guy. I'm preaching my heart out. And then he says to me, I don't have depth. And he doesn't tell me how to get the depth. But do you know what I did? I said, okay, fine, Mantsha, you are hurt. Take a step back. Your pastor is giving you feedback, which is a very rare thing. Other people, when people see you doing something wrong, they don't give you feedback. They just let you be. So now I'm fortunate my pastor is giving me feedback. Then I started listening to him, looking for this depth. Then I realized what he meant. My sermon was not full of the word. It may be exciting. People may remember what I said. But if my sermon is not full of the word, then it's not a sermon. It's a presentation. Then it's something else. Then from then onwards, I was intentional that every time when I preach a sermon, even if the headline verse is one verse, throughout the body of my sermon is going to be full of verses. I am going to make sure that if I make a point, where is the verse for this point? You know, and that way, remember, even with preaching, as a preacher, you're a professional speaker, you are a professional preacher. As a preacher, you are in an industry. That industry may be the church, but it is still an industry. As a preacher, you have an audience. And every time when your audience comes to listen to you, you have to ask yourself, what value am I adding to the audience? What value am I adding into the kingdom of God? So sometimes when we talk about careers, people think we are only talking about what people may call secular jobs. We are not just talking about secular jobs. Whatever vocation that God has given you, even if it doesn't pay yet, because some of us, we are involved in ministries that don't pay. And for as long as you don't treat it like a career, it will never get to a point where it pays you. So you treat it like a career when it doesn't pay you. You treat it like a career when you professionalize it, when no one thinks it's professional. And when we're talking about professionalism, let me just share a small story about how I published my first book. So at our church, we used to have a convention at the beginning of the year. And at the beginning of the year, we would have a 7-day convention. And for about 5 years, my job was to do prayer declarations. So the pastor would say, this is the theme for the convention, and it's also the theme for the year. Let's say maybe build to last. That's our theme. And then this is the verse. So after the pastor had given me the theme and the verse, I would get additional verses, and then I would do prayer declarations based on the verse that the pastor has given me and the additional supporting verses that are also speaking to the theme. So I would do those declarations every day. People loved them. Then during convention, especially pastors would call me and say, we really loved your declarations. Please send them to us. Organized Mpho. My declaration, the theme that the pastor has given me, the verse that the pastor has given me, the additional verses that I have, and my own declaration neatly typed out. So when a person is asking for the declaration, I send it to them typed out as they were. And everybody would say, oh my God, you are so professional. And remember, I was not getting paid. It was a 5-minute job, for 5 minutes at a convention. So, and a lot of people say, oh my God, these are so good, you must write a book. Oh my God, these are so good, you must write a book. That is how I wrote my first book in 2015. Based on 5 minutes, free declarations that you are doing at church. You are professional when no one is watching. I mean, I remember when I was driving to church, I would record myself on my phone, and then play the recording on the car radio. So when the recording said I am the head, I would follow and say I am the head. When the recording said I am the tail, I would follow and say I am the tail. Then maybe on one of the things I would say I am the righteousness of God. Then I realized, no, there are grandmothers in our church. There are people who don't know English in our church. Righteousness is actually a very difficult word to say. So if I want people to be able to follow me well, let me change it. What can I say? Then I say, no, I am in right standing. Then I would go back again. I am in right standing. Then they are following me. Then I say, I am in right standing with God. Even a person who does not know English can follow. So when you are listening to me, when I'm on stage there for 5 minutes, you think maybe I'm making this thing up as I go along. You don't know that I decided to be, and I mean, that book probably sold 5,000 books. And when you look at the beginning, where does it come from? When I was entrusted with 5 minutes, The faithfulness in delivering for that 5 minutes so faithfully resulted in the book resulted in the sales, and the book up to today is still a blessing in my life. So when you think about professionalism, don't say I'll get professional when I get a full-time job. I'll be professional when they pay me for this thing that I'm doing. I think we've spoken about seeds. Even in the workplace, you are sowing seeds. And God has promised us, for as long as there's seed time, there will be harvest time. Whatever seed you are sowing in your profession, in your industry, you are definitely going to reap them. So on the website, mantsha.com, email address, mantsha@mantsha.com, and Facebook, Instagram, all the social media platforms, I'm Mantsha Pheeha. Feel free to inbox me. And my number is 082 755 8219.